Sony's new PS5 Digital in Europe costs the same but has less storage. Why are we going backwards? Hello players, welcome back. Sony just found a way to make the PS5 Digital smaller, not physically, but by shrinking the storage. The next PlayStation 5 Digital in Europe keeps the €499 price tag, but drops it from 1TB to 825 gigabytes, reportedly rolling out on September 13th. Yeah, shrinkflation isn't just for chips, cookies and candies, it's also for flash memory. Sony hasn't done a grand press release thing here. Instead, it's one of those the packaging will tell you situations, and early listings on box art in the EU marks it out to be 825 gigabytes. This is the Chassis E CFI 2100 revision, and the box itself will say 825 gigabytes. Reports say that it's only the digital version that's getting the cut, and the disc model is expected to stay at 1TB. Which is a problem because the digital edition cannot use discs. It's digital only. That's why it's called the digital edition, which means every single gigabyte of storage is precious. And with games like Call of Duty selfishly taking over 300 gigabytes of storage, that means you're not going to get a whole load of games on there. Even 1TB wasn't really enough to begin with. So what sounds like just a 175 gigabyte cut means that you're actually losing enough space for 1.5 AAA games, your entire indie collection, or your clips, screenshots, and those 600 Baldur's Gate quick saves. Yes, Call of Duty does have a new feature now where you can pick and choose to install which parts of the game that you paid for to reduce file size, but games aren't getting any smaller, and devs, they just don't seem to care. So more storage should be the answer. But that's not the answer here. And if you're on fiber and don't mind re-downloading your games every now and then, that's fine. But for everyone else, not so much. And no matter what your internet speed, if you want to protect your privacy online, maybe you want to watch this without your ISP knowing, you can use NordVPN. The current best deal is linked below, and using that link does help out the channel. Now, if you remember, the Slim refresh fixed one of the biggest PS5's early pain points by upping the storage to 1TB, and now it looks like they're walking back that win, but only on a digital edition. So far. The 1TB Slim gave you roughly 842 gigabytes of usable storage, depending on pre-installed games, and that means that the usable space for the revised models is likely going to be around 650 gigabytes. Consoles used to follow a simple arc. As the years go on, you get more for less, or at least more for the same money, and lately that's flipped. It's the same money, just a little less console. So now they get worse. Welcome to the 2025 edition of How Can We Charge the Same But Deliver Less? Now, hardware revisions in consoles are very common and usually happen to reduce production costs. They could be improved manufacturing processes, smaller chip designs, cheaper, more available parts, and usually this brings down the cost, and that saving is usually passed on to us. But they decided to shake things up a bit by keeping the price the same and giving us less, while keeping the savings for themselves. Awesome. These quiet subtractions do tend to erode trust, and us gamers, we notice these things. Let's not forget that Sony bumped the digital edition RRP in Europe to $499 from $450. So maybe rather than push it further, they may be trimming the BOM cost down by just reducing the SSD on the digital model, while leaving the disc version at 1TB, and that keeps the shelf price the same, avoids headlines about another increase, and helps keep margins in markets where currency and component swings have been bad or orange tariffed. Is this consumer friendly? Well, not particularly. Does it make business sense? Unfortunately, yes, it does. Reports focus on capacity but not speed, so there's no indication that the drive's throughput is any slower. Your load times and streaming performance should still be in the same class as the other PS5 units. If you're a physical media person buying the disc PS5, then you're fine. If you're digital only and tend to keep rotating a handful of games installed, 825 gigabytes might be tolerable. But if you live inside Call of Duty, Fortnite, and a couple of 100-gig single-player epics at the same time, 825 gigabytes is going to feel cramped, and you're going to quickly feel that shuffle. If you're buying the PS5 Digital in Europe from mid-September onward, scan the storage line on the packaging. If it says 825, that's the new one. If you want bigger internal space, I would look for the 1 terabyte stock that's remaining now. Or consider the disc model if price parity holds. In some regions, the PS5 disc version hasn't shifted price like the digital has, and if the disc model stays at 1 terabyte, that's immediately extra value, even if you mostly buy digital. Worst case, you ignore the drive, and best case, you can nab some physical bargains. The PS5 still supports a standard M.2 NVMe Gen 4 SSD in the expansion slot. Sony recommends a 5500 megabyte per second or higher transfer speed and a heatsink. Installation is pretty straightforward. You just pop over the cover, there's a couple of screws, and you're done. The sweet spot for price to capacity right now is usually 1 to 2 terabytes. And Black Friday or Prime days are usually a good time to pick them up cheaper. I'll leave the recommended drives that I would buy in the link below. And an extra SSD is the best long-term answer if you're going digital only. We're in a strange console generation where demand spikes, supply shocks, and currency swings have scrambled the old playbook. And there's also far fewer games at this stage of a console's life than we've previously seen. So there's that as well. And we've already seen mid-gen price increases in some regions, which used to be unthinkable. The PS5's digital storage trim keeps the headline pricing flat while easing pressure costs under the hood, I suppose. It's a lever companies and apparently will pull again. If this sticks, we can probably expect more silent revisions where the number on the shelf doesn't change, but the value inside the box does. So that's where we are. So do you prefer the smaller spec at the same price, or would you have stomached maybe an extra 10 or 20 euros price bump to keep the 1 terabyte standard? Or wild theory, should consoles be cheaper by now? Let us all know in the comments, and until next time, keep playing and be excellent to each other.
By the way, the feature most requested by the developers, that was an SSD, which we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems later on in this talk.